The studio air was buzzing, thick with the kind of excitement that comes only when a big name is in the house. Tamron Hall's talk show had always been known for its engaging, sometimes emotional interviews, but today, there was something more electric, almost unpredictable in the air. The crowd was already standing, clapping, cheering as the announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. Please welcome Academy Award-winning actor, Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel walked out with that unmistakable swagger, confident, collected, cool in every step. He was dressed sharply in a deep navy suit that shimmered slightly under the lights, paired with his trademark round glasses. His smile was faint but assured, the kind that told everyone in the room he didn't need applause to feel important, he was important. He gave the audience a casual wave before settling into the plush chair across from Tamron. Samuel, it's such a pleasure to have you here, Tamron said with her signature warm smile, clasping her hands together. You've had one of the most powerful careers in Hollywood, and your new movie, Echoes of War, looks incredible. But before we dive into that, I want to talk about something that's been making headlines lately. Samuel raised an eyebrow, already sensing where this was going. Oh, he said, half joking. Here we go. The audience laughed lightly, but Tamron's tone stayed serious. You recently made some very candid remarks about the direction of Hollywood, calling out what you described as a culture of hypocrisy and controlled speech. Some people took issue with that, saying your comments were too harsh, even divisive. Samuel shifted in his seat, his grin fading into something sterner. See, that's the thing about honesty, people love it until it makes them uncomfortable. Then suddenly, you're the bad guy for saying what everyone's already thinking. The audience murmured in agreement. A few people clapped. Tamron, sensing the heat rising, pressed further. Of course, honesty is important. But do you think there's a line? Maybe a point where being outspoken turns into being, well, confrontational. Samuel chuckled, shaking his head. I don't draw lines, Tamron. I've lived too long, worked too hard, and fought too many damn battles to start filtering myself now. You don't survive this business by being soft. Tamron tried to keep her smile, though her tone tightened slightly. I understand that, but some people feel your words were directed at specific individuals, people you've worked with, and that maybe it wasn't the right platform to express that frustration. His gaze sharpened. So, let me get this straight, I speak the truth about what I see in this industry, and suddenly I'm supposed to apologize. You're asking the wrong man that question. The audience reacted audibly this time, a mix of gasps and murmurs. Tamron leaned forward slightly, determined to keep control of her show. Samuel, I'm not asking you to apologize. I'm asking if you think your words have consequences. Of course they do, he said quickly, voice rising slightly. Everything we say has consequences. But I'd rather face mine standing tall than spend my life tiptoeing around people who can't handle reality. That's not how I was raised, and it's not how I've lived. Tamron nodded, her expression now serious. But isn't there also something to be said for diplomacy? Especially when you've become such a public figure, someone whose words carry weight. Samuel leaned back, crossing his legs and giving her a long, measured look. Tamron, I didn't get where I am by being diplomatic. I got here by being authentic. You want polished answers? Go talk to a politician. Laughter rippled through the audience, but Tamron didn't laugh. She kept her focus, steady and professional. I think people admire your authenticity, Samuel. But some feel there's a difference between authenticity and aggression. Would you agree? That question seemed to hit a nerve. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing just slightly. Aggression. His voice dropped lower, calm but edged with intensity. See, that's the problem right there. When a man like me, a black man, speaks with passion, it's called aggression. But when others do it, it's called confidence or boldness. Why's that? The audience went completely silent. Even Tamron hesitated for a moment, visibly processing his words. She finally replied, carefully, that's not what I meant, Samuel. I was referring to tone, not identity. He didn't let up. Tone. My tone's been the same for 30 years, the tone that got me here. The tone that made studios listen. The tone that told people I'm not here to play small. So forgive me if I don't soften it just because it makes some folks uncomfortable on morning TV. The atmosphere thickened, the room suddenly feeling smaller, tighter. You could feel the tension between them pulsing like static. Tamron shifted slightly in her chair, forcing a polite smile. Well, that's certainly one way to put it, she said. Samuel gave a faint laugh, but there was no warmth in it. It's the only way to put it. I've spent decades in this business watching people get silenced, people who had something real to say. I'm not about to join that list. Behind the cameras, producers were exchanging anxious looks. The control room was abuzz, whispering urgently into headsets. One voice asked whether they should cut to commercial, but another hesitated. This was compelling television, after all. Tamron took a breath, regaining composure. I respect your perspective, she said, her voice smooth but strained. But I think what people are reacting to isn't your honesty, it's the delivery. Some feel you're dismissive, maybe even disrespectful, toward others in the industry. Samuel's jaw tensed. Disrespectful. I've given my life to this industry. I've built my career from the ground up. I didn't start with family connections or privilege, I started with hunger. If that's disrespect, then maybe this business needs a little more of it. A wave of applause came from part of the audience, but Tamron looked visibly unsettled now. Her smile faltered, and she leaned forward, tone sharpening slightly. So are you saying you don't believe there's room for accountability in how we speak publicly? He stared at her for a long moment before replying, I believe accountability goes both ways. You can't invite someone like me onto your show and then get surprised when I speak my mind. That's what you wanted, right? The truth. Tamron's professional veneer cracked, just barely. I wanted a conversation, Samuel. But it seems like you're turning this into something else. And maybe, he replied coolly, that's because you're asking the wrong questions. The words hung in the air like a challenge. The audience gasped softly, unsure whether to cheer or stay silent. Tamron straightened her posture, visibly irritated now. I think we'll have to agree to disagree, she said crisply. Samuel gave a slow nod, stood up from his chair, and adjusted his jacket. I think we're done here. The studio erupted in shock. Gasps echoed. Someone in the audience called out, no, don't go. But he was already walking off stage, his stride steady, his expression unreadable. Tamron sat frozen for a second before turning to the camera, forcing her best composed smile. We'll be right back, she said, voice calm but tight, as the screen faded to commercial. Behind the scenes, chaos broke out. Producers scrambled, Tamron's assistants whispered frantically, and the studio audience whispered in disbelief. What was meant to be a promotional interview had turned into one of the most unforgettable and volatile moments in talk show history. When the cameras faded back in after the commercial break, the energy in the studio was nothing short of electric, but not the good kind. It wasn't excitement anymore, it was tension, the kind that crawled across the air and made everyone in the audience sit up a little straighter. Tamron Hall sat center stage, her posture perfect, her expression carefully neutral. Her smile, though warm on the surface, didn't quite reach her eyes. She glanced briefly toward the empty chair Samuel L. Jackson had occupied only minutes ago. It was still slightly turned, the imprint of his abrupt departure lingering like a ghost. She took a steadying breath and said into the camera, well, sometimes, passionate conversations take unexpected turns. We thank Mr. Jackson for joining us today and wish him the best on his upcoming film, Echoes of War. Her voice didn't waver, but her hands, resting neatly on her lap, were clenched tight. The studio audience didn't know whether to applaud or stay quiet. A few gave hesitant claps that quickly faded into an uneasy silence. The floor manager made the wrap it up gesture, and Tamron forced a bright smile. We'll be right back after the break with some incredible young filmmakers you don't want to miss. The lights dimmed, the cameras cut, and the moment they did, Tamron exhaled sharply, lowering her microphone. What the hell just happened? She muttered under her breath as her producers rushed toward her. Her lead producer, a fast-talking man named Dana, leaned in. He's already in his dressing room. We're trying to calm him down. He said he felt set up. Set up, Tamron repeated incredulously. I asked him standard questions. That's what I do. She took a sip of water, her pulse still racing. He came in defensive. He wanted a fight. Meanwhile, in the greenroom hallway, Samuel was pacing back and forth, his jaw tight, eyes flashing with that signature fire everyone knew from his movie roles. His publicist, Valerie, a petite woman in a tailored black blazer, stood between him and the cluster of crew members nervously hovering by the door. Sam, Valerie said carefully, please, just take a breath. You know how these shows go, she's not your enemy. Samuel stopped pacing and turned to her. Not my enemy, she tried to box me in on live TV. I came here to talk about the damn movie, not get grilled about what I said online. He sat down, rubbing his temples. I should have known better. Valerie sighed, lowering her voice. Look, we can still fix this. If you want, I'll call the producers, we'll get a joint statement out before this thing explodes. He looked at her, unimpressed. You think a statement's gonna fix this? The internet's already got it. They'll twist it however they want. And he wasn't wrong. While the chaos unfolded backstage, Twitter and TikTok were already ablaze. Someone from the studio audience had captured part of the confrontation on their phone, Samuel leaning forward, voice sharp, saying, "That's exactly what you meant." The clip was spreading like wildfire, with captions like, Samuel L. Jackson vs. Tamron Hall, things get heated. And, talk show tension, Jackson walks off live. By the time Tamron made it to her dressing room an hour later, the trending hashtags were already climbing. Hashtag Samuel L. Jackson, hashtag Tamron Hall Show, and hashtag Walk Off TV were all over social media. Her assistant handed her a tablet showing thousands of comments flooding in. "Girl, you handled that with grace," one fan wrote. "He was right to stand up for himself," another shot back. "This is why I love Samuel. He doesn't fake it for cameras." She tried to corner him, that was uncalled for. She was doing her job. The internet had split down the middle, hashtag Team Samuel versus hashtag Team Tamron. Tamron read through a few of the posts, then put the tablet down with a sigh. "I was doing my job," she said softly, more to herself than anyone else. Why does everyone always want to make it about something bigger? Her executive producer entered quietly. "Tamron, we just got a call from Entertainment Weekly. They're asking for a comment." She closed her eyes briefly. "Tell them we're issuing a short statement, keep it neutral. No drama, no blame." Meanwhile, Samuel sat silently in his car, parked outside the studio's back exit. He stared out the window for a long time before finally unlocking his phone. His notifications were flooding in, text messages, news alerts, Twitter mentions. His manager had already called twice. He opened Instagram, hit record, and stared into the camera. His tone was calm but firm. "Sometimes, you get invited somewhere to speak your truth, but folks don't really want to hear it. They want sound bites. They want control. That's when you walk." It was short, direct, and carried all the weight of his voice, the same commanding tone that made audiences listen. He posted it without another word. Within an hour, the clip had millions of views. Tamron's team saw it immediately. Her producer, Dana, burst into her dressing room. He posted a video. "It's blowing up." Tamron raised her eyebrows. "What did he say?" "He said we didn't want to hear his truth." She exhaled slowly, leaning back in her chair. "Of course he did." She looked toward the ceiling, thoughtful now, her irritation fading into something more reflective. "The truth is, maybe he did feel cornered. Maybe I pushed too hard." Dana frowned. "Tamron, you did your job. You didn't do anything wrong." "I know," she said quietly, "but it doesn't matter what we think. It's about how the world perceives it." By nightfall, the story had made every major entertainment headline. Samuel L. Jackson walks off Tamron Hall show after heated debate. Tamron Hall and Samuel L. Jackson clash live, sparks fly. Hollywood icon loses his cool on daytime TV. Talk shows dissected it. Pundits speculated. Former guests on Tamron's show weighed in online, some defending her professionalism, others applauding Samuel's unapologetic stance. The incident had become the cultural conversation of the week. The next morning, Tamron sat before her mirror, preparing for another day of filming. Her phone buzzed with a message from her husband. "You handled yourself perfectly. Don't second guess it." She smiled faintly, then turned to her stylist. "Let's keep the look simple today. I want to seem grounded." During that day's live taping, she addressed the incident directly. Yesterday's interview with Samuel L. Jackson got more intense than expected, she began. "I have deep respect for Mr. Jackson and his incredible body of work. Passionate discussions are part of meaningful conversation, and sometimes, passion overflows. But I value dialogue, even when it's uncomfortable." Her statement was poised, measured, and wrapped in professionalism. The audience applauded. Across town, Samuel watched the clip on his phone while waiting for a flight to Atlanta. He smiled faintly. "She's good," he said under his breath. His assistant looked at him curiously, but he didn't elaborate. He leaned back in his seat, slipping on his headphones. By the weekend, the story began to cool, but the video of the confrontation had already been viewed over 30 million times. It became one of the most talked about moments in talk show history. Some claimed it was staged for publicity. Others swore it was raw authenticity. Either way, both Tamron Hall and Samuel L. Jackson had come out even more relevant than before, two strong personalities colliding on live television, reminding everyone why real conversations still matter. In private, Tamron later told her producer, "It's funny. Everyone says they want honesty, until they actually see it." And somewhere, halfway across the country, Samuel said almost the same thing to his publicist. "You know what the problem is? People say they want real, but when you give it to them, they flinch." Neither of them realized they'd both just said the same truth, two different versions of the same coin, bound by one unforgettable television moment that no one would ever forget.